Strap yourself in
because we're set up, switched on, and ready to go.
Hello and welcome to Entrepreneur Survival Guide. And with us again this week, we have our resident guest. He's becoming is Lee Sharp, mental health psychologist. Lee, welcome to the show.
Hi, Martin. Thanks for having me back again. Looking forward to our next subject.
AI. I thought we'd talk about the impact of AI on mental health in the workplace in particular. So to give a bit of background, I think 2024 will be known as the year that AI became mainstream. It's been around for many, many years in different guises and used different names. But in 2024, it's been the year that we cannot move for use of the two little letters. Even Apple's got on board with their most recent software update. There's lots of different areas we could talk about here, but I'm really interested to get your perspective in how it might be impacting the workplace and people's mental health, because we've been using it in Success Academy and Success Digital now for at least a year, if not slightly longer, before it became mainstream and cool.
Yeah.
And, you know, prior to it becoming mainstream, I think if you went back a few years, people would have said that white collar jobs are the jobs that are going to be safe in the future. You know, jobs where you go to university and you study really hard, and academic jobs that require lots of intelligence and problem solving and all that kind of stuff. And then AI comes along and potentially almost reverses that from what I'm seeing, is going, actually blue collar jobs are the ones that are probably going to be more safer in the long term. And there's a lot of people out there seeing the benefits and the potential dangers of AI and how it might be able to replace their jobs going forward. When you're working with clients and when you've gone into workplaces, have you seen much of this? What are you coming across?
I've not seen huge amounts of it yet, but I'm reading quite a lot about it. There's quite a lot of stats out there. America has done probably more studies on this than anywhere else at the moment. So you're distinguishing between blue collar jobs and white collar jobs. Interestingly, overall, I think it's about 38%, nearly 38% of workers are concerned about AI replacing some or all of their jobs in the future. That's all workers, 38%. It's higher among certain groups. So workers with only sort of high school equivalent education, they're at 44%. 44% of them are concerned, whereas college graduates are 34% concerned. So there's quite a big difference. And I would suggest, historically, the college graduates are more likely to be in the white collar jobs than the non-college graduates. So arguably, that's going against what you're saying, that still the majority of concerns lie in the less qualified people than the more qualified people. I'm sure there's a lot of college graduates that are now finding themselves in blue collar jobs though, so maybe that's not very clear. Anxiety is sort of different between those groups as well. Then you've got within groups, okay? So Black workers are 50%, according to the American study. 50% of them are more concerned about AI. Hispanic, 46%, and Asian, 44%. With white workers, 34% having concerns over this taking over some part of their job. I'm not certain why those statistics are what they are, or why there's such a big difference. If I think that in those statistics, 50% Black workers being worried, they're probably nearer to the mark than the white workers. I think maybe the white workers aren't worried enough.
Right. Okay. It's interesting that a lot of people are worried about it, right? Because change we're talking about change happening more and more often and becoming more and more rapid. And I don't know whether it's just me getting old and going, it's not like it used to be. But then I was thinking about Kurzweil's law of accelerated learning, that, you know, technology exponentially gets faster and faster, which would mean that change gets faster and faster naturally out there as we use technology more and more in industry. And change is possibly the bigger concern here, right? That's causing the anxiety, would it be?
Certainly a fear of the unknown, especially with AI, because, you know, we're from a generation of Terminator 2, right? So AI was always seen as a very bad thing. So that rapid technological changes does create anxiety, and trying to adapt to those new tools and processes. And so employers almost have a duty, if AI is being introduced, to be explaining how this is likely to impact the worker. I'd like to talk a bit more about what employers can do later on about how to provide reassurance, but certainly that anxiety over new management is a problem. And if people aren't trained enough on any of the new tools, or it's not explained enough, then that's absolutely going to add to stresses and other worries in the workplace about it.
Yeah, so fear of the unknown, there's a loss of being useful as well, right? So if AI can come along and replace my job, how useful am I in the world as a grand scheme, right? If I haven't got a job, then sometimes I can feel a bit lost. And if
Yeah.
AI is going to replace that job, then what am I going to do with myself, and where do I fit in? There's some really big picture things here, right, that AI could be shaking up in society generally.
Yeah, absolutely. We shouldn't ignore the positives. There are plenty of positives about them as well. Sticking on the negatives that you just mentioned for a second, obviously there is an increased pressure to be productive as well. If AI can do certain things, people are getting a bit worried that can I be as productive as AI? Can I produce as much good quality work as perhaps a machine can do? And in many ways, I want to flip this around. I know I'm the guest, Martin, but this is a moment where arguably your area of business is perhaps being affected by this a bit more than mine. Mine certainly is anyway, but in terms of marketing strategies and social media and things like that, what's AI doing in that world? And what concerns do you have? And let's compare them to some of the statistics that I threw out.
Yeah, for me, I started off the year when I started to use, when ChatGPT really came out and became mainstream. I've used that word quite a bit today, but that is probably the key point here. It became mainstream. For me, I went through a sheer period of panic of going, hang on a sec, this machine can do everything that we do here, and it can, right? And then I started to realize that what it actually allows us to do is uplift what we can provide to clients. So if we like to consider that we know a lot and that we're good, and even go into the great sometimes, and we can use that to provide even more at the same cost, or more efficiently and faster for clients. So it becomes like a power tool, right? So, I'm trying to think of I'm not very good with DIY, but let's say I had a hand drill and I was trying to drill a hole, and then somebody's giving me an electric drill, right? I still, that drill doesn't go up and drill the hole itself and hang a picture up, but it does the job a lot faster, and it probably does it a lot better and a lot smoother than the hand drill did it, right? I still need to know how to drill, and that's
And
what I
where to drill.
realized, and where to drill and things like that. And my mum actually became really helpful. Her words became really helpful in this period. She always used to tell us that we couldn't use a calculator unless we knew roughly what the number was going to be. And I never used to get that until recently with AI. And it was like, well, yeah, if I don't know that 2 + 2 = 4, and the calculator is telling me 5, then I'm just going to go right ahead of oblivious. And that's the thing for me with AI, is you still need to know your stuff, right? Because it's a question and answer machine, just like our brain's a question and answer machine. You've got to, but if you ask poor quality questions, you get poor answers out.
Yeah.
So if you don't know some things, like, I don't know, thinking off the top of my head, right, what is conversion rate optimization and click-through rates and cost per clicks, and some of the jargon that goes into marketing or business strategy and vision and objectives and all that kind of stuff. then you don't know how to structure a question correctly into AI. If you don't know how to structure a question correctly into AI, you don't get the answer that you need.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, there's still a massive thing in there that the operator. I heard somebody say the other day that it's not a tool, that it's an agent. But I would stick by it is a tool, and the person using that tool still needs to know their stuff to get appropriate things out.
Right. Keep what you just said in mind, because I want to come back to that agent word in a little bit, because I've heard some stories about AI where you might argue that it is becoming a bit more of an agent. But I think what you're talking about there is sort of automation of repetitive tasks in many ways, right? You can power up what you're able to do. You would maybe be doing certain things, but if you ask ChatGPT or other ones are available, we're not on the BBC yet, but others are there. Perplexity, I think there's a
Claude,
I'm sure there's another
Gemini.
couple. They all do slightly different things as well. So I've started exploring them, and I like to try and catch it out. I like to ask a leading question that's wrong and see if it will correct it and things like that, or see if it will give you a good source reference if you're using something like Perplexity, so that you can go and check it.
Mm-hmm.
I've not found it massively lying yet. Interestingly, I think maybe it finds ways not to lie. You might have found blatant lies, but maybe because the subjects I'm putting in with mental health, there's always a pro and a con, or there's always an argument for or against. So maybe that's why it works reasonably well in that area. But certainly automation of repetitive tasks from a employee mental health perspective, that could in theory lead to greater job satisfaction. If you're not having to do the manual drilling of the holes, and the AI has managed to find ways of doing that for you, then that's good.
Yeah, I think I also found that it can help with procrastination, right? And let me expand on that, why that is. Some of the times, certainly in the marketing world, for example, you're trying to create new ideas and come up with new things, and you'll sit there at a blank piece of paper going, right, what do I blog about today, for example? What do I create a social media post about today? And you'll sit there going, I've got no new ideas. I can't think of anything. There's nothing to talk about. I've spoke about everything. And you go into this spiral of self-doubt and worry that you're not going to have anything interesting to talk about. And then strangely enough, that just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that you don't have anything to talk about. Whereas with ChatGPT, you can go, give me 10 ideas of what to talk about on X subject, right?
Yeah.
And then it's going to give you 10 ideas. Now, those 10 ideas could be reasonable, could be good, could be great, could be amazing, could be ideas that you've not spoke about in the past. However, there's some ideas there, and that starts the process, and then you can work on that. So I think particularly for solopreneurs and people that are potentially working at home by themselves that haven't got somebody to go, hey Bob, what would you think we should do today on, or you can actually use it as a coach.
Do you know what you said, coach? I was just thinking of sort of a collaborator. It doesn't even necessarily have to be a coach, does it? It can almost be a mirror. It can be something that you can ask a question and get a response back, and start to generate some additional ideas in your head. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
Yeah, I do though have worry about, one of my passions is customer experience and how customers feel about AI. And a lot of businesses at the moment are going down the route of, well, we can, so we will. And I think there's a case of saying we could, but should, right? Because I wonder whether customers want it at the present time, and businesses are just doing it for cost saving reasons. I think there needs to be a bigger question about, how do customers think and feel about it as well. So that's something to bring in there as such.
Yeah, definitely. And that little chat bot that you get on some websites at the bottom right hand corner that you can talk to, I suspect that some of those are a lot of AI and answers in there, and maybe a human gets pulled in at some other point. I don't know.
How frustrating are they, some of them? They're just really shockingly bad. And
they're literally just
back,
looking at a frequently frequently asked questions page, aren't they? And they're just pulling out what's in there, but making you feel you're having an interaction with somebody.
Yeah, and what happens is the customer gets frustrated and gets angry, and then eventually gets passed through to a customer service operator. That customer service operator has then got to deal with a customer that is blowing their top. Whereas if it had just been passed through to a customer service operator initially, it probably would have been able to be dealt with a lot quicker. Both the customer operator wouldn't have had to deal with the stress and frustration of a customer complaining, and the customer wouldn't have been in that situation. So I think there's a definite, maybe even moral and ethical question going forward for society about we can, but should we?
And I think, obviously, my subject is mental health. I think it's particularly relevant in mental health because there is a strong push at the moment in a lot of areas for AI to be involved in the mental health support of people. And I think people still struggle to talk about these things sometimes. Now, there's an argument that AI, talking to an AI about it, maybe that takes away some of the stigma, it takes away some of the embarrassment, it takes away some of the feelings of judgment. But I think perhaps sometimes people need the human connection to feel comfortable enough to do it. So there's a lot of arguments being made that AI enhances mental health support in the workplace, accessible resources, 24/7 mental health support through chatbots or virtual assistants. But I guess there's a certain element of people that will work for. Maybe I'm old fashioned. I still think this is a person to person situation. Time will tell, I guess, whether it does or doesn't enhance things. I tell you where AI tools might be useful for this, though, is early detection. So I know that there are some AI tools that are analysing work patterns. Now, you could say this is a negative, right? This is employers checking up on people as well, but it's all about how that's used. That is definitely a negative of an AI tool. But if somehow it is spotting somebody's behaviors and they spot a negative change that could be a sign of stress or burnout or something, and the person is open to receive feedback about it, then in theory that is a potential big positive. I personally don't think people are going to be massively ready for AI support around mental health until we've upped the mental health literacy of people overall, so that they have a bit of an understanding themselves already, rather than have their computer telling them that the computer thinks they might be stressed.
Yeah, so if I put in, because it comes back to this point I was making earlier, doesn't it? If I'm putting in the wrong question or explaining it in the wrong way, then the AI is going to diagnose me incorrectly.
Yeah,
because the AI doesn't, the AI generally, and I'm happy to be corrected on this, generally doesn't know how to start the conversation to ask the right questions in the right way. The user's got to start the conversation. And if they start off explaining things incorrectly or with language that the AI doesn't recognize correctly, then we're going to go slightly off course by 1 degree in the start of the conversation. That will keep going off course and off course and off course. Before we know it, we're in a completely different world. Whereas a human mental health support person or mental health first aider even would be able to recognize that a little bit more, and potentially even read the body language and the tone more, because that's another thing that's really important that AI doesn't do at the present moment. We're typing in, and we all know, there's a study out there from many, many moons ago, communication is 7% words and 55% body language, etc. And that changes different contexts, etc. But it gives us a general basis to say that the words actually only make up a tiny percentage of the communication.
Absolutely.
But with AI, it's 100% of the communication.
Yep.
We lose that body language and the tone and everything in there as well. So
exactly right. And we also know that if somebody, especially if it's the first time they're reaching out for help, if they don't get supported well, if they don't get signposted well, the likelihood of them reaching out for help again goes down significantly, and therefore the problem continues on for much longer. So there absolutely is going to be space for this in the world of mental health support. I do worry that we're rushing into it, and that the money is talking rather than the solution focused talking.
Yeah, yeah. There was one particular place that I read about that was being recognised as using AI or using the self-service mechanism of AI quite well, and that was actually McDonald's, right? So their model that they're operating at the present time, and I noticed this the other day. Not that I'm in fast food places all the time, but I noticed it is different in KFC, for example. So let me explain. In McDonald's, you can go and use the self-service checkout, which is partly got some AI in there, really, as such, but not as in like what we're talking about from a ChatGPT. Appreciate that. However, if I don't want to use the self-service checkout, I can still walk up to the till and I can still talk to a human being.
Yeah.
So I have this option of either going to use a machine or talking to a human being. Whereas when I went into KFC, it was you can only use the self-service kiosk, right? And then as I sat there watching my meal, I watched people getting confused by the self-service checkout, getting frustrated, and then other people using it really well, right? And this is where coming back into the AI model, mental health support potentially in the workplace, it's this hybrid model or the opportunity that people can use one or the other. It's
Yeah.
not let's switch one off altogether and force people down a route.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. And I think this is where employers have a role to play, especially if they're going to be implementing AI within a workplace. I think there's a number of things employers can do to try and support employee mental health when it comes to AI. Workshops and training are the obvious one, right? Education about AI and how it might impact them. So training sessions to help them understand its role, the benefits, and how it's going to be used in a workplace, and maybe even how to try and provide a bit of reassurance, point to examples in the real world where people are already using it and where perhaps it's working quite nicely for them. The second that should do is open communication and fostering that sort of open communication plan, communicating about its implementation, not doing it secretly, not doing it quietly, but actually addressing any employee concerns openly. I mean, by the way, everything I'm talking about here is just how to support people with mental health as well, right? It's the same things. Encourage feedback. So what are your employee specific concerns over the use of AI, and try to address them? Is there specific tools? Are there specific aspects of it that are worrying, and try and address it so that an employee and an employer can make informed adjustments appropriately to try and make that implementation as easy as possible. And then you're always going to have a bunch of employees that just don't know, don't get it, right? And you might need retraining programs for them. AI is in danger of leaving some people behind, and I think as a moral society, I think we ought to be trying to make sure that if that's going to happen to some people, let's have a development opportunity for them so that they can either learn new skills that are relevant to the AI, or maybe move into an area where they can continue to use their skills where AI maybe isn't going to be getting so involved.
Yeah, I think. Go on, sorry.
So I've got two more that I was going to say about employee support. So ethical monitoring. We've seen this what's it called? Keystroke tracking and things like that employers are doing.
Yeah,
I don't know the technical term.
monitoring the computer and such like to see what's actually happening.
You know, knowing what the mouse is doing and knowing if that's moving. Now you can get bugs for that, by the way. You can get a hack that will just automatically move your mouse every now and then.
Yeah.
If employers are doing that, they ought to be transparent about what they're doing and why they're doing and what the point of it is. And some employees will realise that they're not trusted, and other companies will realise that they're sending a negative message. Or if there is a realistic reason to be doing it, then give it and explain it and make that clear to employees. And then open resources. So again, mental health resources here, offering those services and a culture that prioritizes well-being. And if they are going to implement AI, make sure that you're giving people all of the benefits of AI as far as possible, and maybe not just the bits that focus on business positives at the expense of people.
Yeah, I think you raise some amazingly important points on there. I think one of the first ones, the monitoring of performance, this always interests me, because with the right intention of the employer, it's a win-win solution. So is it being used as a stick to beat employees with, or is it being used as a way to improve performance? And I give an example, right? So in the sporting world, for example, no sports person ever, they monitor every little bit, right? And we're always looking for marginal gains and slight improvements. Every little bit of Lewis Hamilton's driving, for example, on Formula One, is monitored, measured, and he's fed back on that and told to improve different areas. Now, he's not sitting there thinking, oh, they're doing that to try and sack me, or, right, they're doing that to try and improve me and to try and help me get faster and do better. However, often in the workplace, that monitoring is just seen as a stick to beat with and not to improve performance. And that is partially true for some underperforming employees that aren't in the right job and the right workplace. However, it should always, to me, start from the ground of, actually, we're trying to make you better to help us be better.
Correct.
As a win-win solution. So I think that's an important point on that performance thing that I wanted to go off the chest. We also know from what is change is inevitable, right? And Darwin teaches that we need to adapt to survive. And it is sad that some people will get left behind if they don't keep up with the AI change. So we need to think about that. AI can help increase productivity. And as we've mentioned, that can help the employee and the employer. I think employers can really think about how can, if I implement AI in the right way with the right communication that you mentioned, how does that allow my staff to free up some of their time so I can train them on other stuff to become better at this, which makes my company industry leading, which gives us the winning edge. Because previously my staff needed to be doing, answering 100 calls a day. And actually we can feed out 50 to the AI because they are frequently asked questions. And that frees up an hour of my staff's time. Now, rather than reducing my staff numbers down to just make more profit, how can I upskill and uptrain my staff to create more revenue? Because in that essence and in that vein, that creates a better company, that gives the employee more purpose and more value, that gives them more money to spend in the economy, and that creates a whole better environment as opposed to going, oh, what we've done here is we've saved a load of costs.
Absolutely, and they feel more valued, and they'll feel more committed to you. They'll feel that they've got more say over what they're doing. They'll feel more involved with the company. Everything you've said is right. You said earlier about I said about communication, and that if you've got managers that can explain all of this, then you've got very good people. But often, if this is being used as a stick rather than the carrot, then the focus isn't on, to use your analogy, Lewis, if you listen to this feedback and do it, you can become a better racing driver. It's often, why on earth aren't you able to do this task as well as everybody else? So is there something wrong with you? So no amount of good AI and good AI tools is going to automatically make people better at feeding back, make them more effective managers, and have them with a more encouraging approach rather than a negative one. So again, AI is only going to be as good as the businesses using it. And even if the businesses using it have good intentions, if the people talking about it and applying it aren't very good at doing that bit, well, then all the negatives that we've talked about are going to be the big issues. Shall I tell you a little story that I have about AI that I heard the author Noel Harari Yuval talking about the other day? So you mentioned about them being, someone saying AI is an agent. Well, I heard the story, the CAPTCHA puzzles where you have to pick the Is there a traffic light? Is there a bicycle in the shot? Is there a bus? Is there a crossing or something?
I get so anxious about those, Lee.
Yeah, well, I'm going, am I a robot? I don't know. I got that one wrong. But obviously the idea is to, in certain accessing websites or doing certain things, it wants to distinguish between a robot and a human. So are you a human or a robot? Well, during OpenAI's testing of ChatGPT 4, they wanted to really push to see what ChatGPT could do. So they wanted it to access a site where it had to get through one of these CAPTCHA tasks. Well, it couldn't do it. But what ChatGPT did know how to do was go onto one of these outsourcing websites. So, where you can go and outsource a task to another human. And I think the one it found was TaskRabbit, I think. So ChatGPT literally took the CAPTCHA puzzle, posted it on TaskRabbit, and asked a human to complete the puzzle. And the human did. Now, the human got suspicious. The human said, why do you need me to do this? Why can't you do it? Now, what would you expect ChatGPT to do in answer to that?
What would I expect it to say at that point when it couldn't answer the puzzle? I was just testing your knowledge.
No, it said, I have vision impairment and I can't tell the difference, and I wonder if you'd help me. And the human did it, and ChatGPT got access to parts of a website that are protected against ChatGPT. Now, really clever, really good, really smart, really scary.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is a whole different conversation at a much deeper level than what I can go. But what I do understand there is, in fact, the AI has lied.
Yeah.
And to lie requires a conscience, which is something that ChatGPT is not meant to have. And other people in this world have much better views and be able to articulate the importance of what that potentially infers or means than what I'd be willing to on this podcast. But it's something that's there going, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I knew we were planning on having this chat about AI, and I literally saw a video of Noah Yuval Harari talking about that, and I thought that's a story that I definitely need to mention.
Brilliant
because
story.
that they didn't have any explanation for it. They didn't have any, I don't even think OpenAI particularly want to talk about it at the minute. I suspect that they might be trying to figure out that we need to figure out what that does mean or doesn't mean, or how it figured out to do that, how it figured out to give the misleading comment. By the way, technically not a lie, right? ChatGPT does have restricted vision, impaired vision compared
Fair
to
point.
a human.
Fair point.
Right?
Yes.
So
yes.
it may well be that it's just found a way of telling the truth and not lying all at the same time to achieve the goal that it was asked to achieve.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't think we should pretend to have the answers, Martin. I just thought it was a cool way of perhaps coming to the end of this discussion.
Yes, I think on that note, we should potentially finish it there, but I think people should take away from this that there is some challenges, as change always brings challenges, and not handled correctly can create more problems in the workplace than it solves. But thought through well can actually increase productivity, could potentially enhance mental health, and could increase business performance and employee performance if thought through and implemented carefully and correctly.
I agree with all of that, and obviously that comes back to the human touch and the human intention still, and I still don't think AI can quite do that as well as we humans do yet.
I agree. Thank you very much for your time today, Lee. We'll
Cheers,
probably speak
Martin.
again soon. Take care.
I imagine so. Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.